Thank you, Jack. I want to thank you for the opportunity to be here today. Hopefully, I know over the next 2 days you will learn a lot. I've learned a lot in what I've been doing, and I'm looking forward to the conference also. I farm at Mead, Nebraska. It's just 20 miles from here, just straight west of Omaha here. We run a corn, soybean, wheat operation. Brought wheat into the operation about 2013. It's really helped our soils out, like what it does to our rotation. And but it's a challenge also in strip till and planting into the next year, and I'll show some of that. Prior to 2005, we were using a disc ripper, we were using a mulch finisher, doing the basic, and then we got introduced to Ray Rawson, and we did the triple colder system for strip till with a colder cart, put some nutrients down. Worked well, and then bought another one in 2008, a little bit bigger one, and then we met a gentleman. We work with a consultant, Bob Strite, in Boone, Iowa, and he introduced us to Kevin Kimberly out of Maxwell, Iowa, and so we started with him in the fall of 2009, and he introduced me into let's get a shank, helping to boil the soil, and so we started with him and bought a Blue Jet machine, 24-row, 60-foot, AT 6010. So pictures of that and what we did to it and the changes and everything. One of Kevin's famous quotes is, if you keep deviating from what is normal over and over again, it quickly becomes normal, and that is dangerous. So we got to look forward. We just got to know what we're looking for. I mean, we're looking for better ways to raise yields, better ways for our soil. So we got to keep an open mind, as you'll hear a lot of today. This is a no-till field. We go into the neighbors' fields a few times, and we see what's going on in there because we want to see that we're doing something better on our farm than maybe they are, and so we just sneak over there and we see. And what I want to show you here is this. If you can see the side splits right in here, that's coming from where your True V lifted, and that would be one. So the soil's too compacted here, and then the probably didn't have enough down pressure on the planter that the True V's were opening, or the True V openers were pulling up the soil and not holding it. The rubber tires were not holding it down, and that's leaving you cracks. And then as I lift it with a putty knife here, you can just see that opens up, and that's just going to let air in next to your roots, and that's one thing we don't want. We want a tight seed-to-soil contact, which we hear a lot of these days. And one of the first things we did was went out and found our hard pan. So, because we were told previously to just go out and deep rip every acre, every 15 inches apart, because our strip tilling was moving over 15 inches every year. So we plant corn in one area, and then we didn't strip ahead of soybeans, so we're always stripping the same area for corn. But we were told to deep rip every acre. Well, that's a lot of cost involved. I did buy a deep ripper and was ready for it, but what we did do is dig pits with our backhoe, and then just climb inside and take a knife and just pull up, and you can find your hard pan. And we found that our hard pan was most of it around 12 inches, even 10 to 11 inches. We went through the low areas, and we done medium areas in the field, and then we did high areas in the field. And most of it was the low areas where water sat. And so those we went out and deep ripped. We went down 24 inches because that's where our hard pan was. We got those loosened up, and then from there on, just knowing that if we could strip till, we could get the hard pan taken out with the ones that were only, 10 to 12 inches. Because actually, the knives, and we've got a different selection of knives that I'll show, but knives do they'll break up compaction probably at least 1.5 inches below where the knife is actually at, so we can get that cracked. And I'm just showing here, if you have to do it by hand, you can. We picked up a farm in spring one year, and so we just went out and dug it, didn't take the backhoe out, and you can do the same thing, just dig down with a spade. And so here's my machine. Like I said, it's a Blue Jet. Takes a lot of work to get these set, no matter which machine you have. We don't adjust rows all the same. We go down each row and find out what depth we're working at. So like all our openers are different heights across the whole bar, just because we want them to do the correct job. The wing frames, you need to level those out, and that changes throughout different seasons. Coulter depth, we want the coulter depth as deep as the knife is going, so we bury them. So they are all the way down. Just show you a little video of it running. And this is one of the best ways to look at how your machine is working. If you're in the cab and you can't see and you stop and have to get out and look, it's hard to see what it's really doing. So we like taking cameras, watching. I'll have one of my sons drive. I can ride alongside, beside it, watch what it's doing. That is the best way. What I'm showing here is, so I've got this bar back here. It stretches back about 3 feet. I'll just look it on this side. I can get that there. So this part here. So what we had to do, because not everything's manufactured correctly sometimes. I mean, we had to, maybe there's a little tweak in something, but we had to add just a little shim. And this 1/8 inch piece of angle iron here made a total difference, right there it is, in what the knife can do in the back. It brought it back down at least 2 inches. And so we just needed to do that to get it the depth, because we want every knife the same consistent depth. And what we did with openers, we bought Yetter openers. Blue Jet has theirs, so it's right with the Coulter. But we went ahead and made our own brackets, bought Yetter Coulters, and put them out front. And what we like to do with that is we like to clean our trash before the Coulter even gets there, because otherwise you can pin trash with the Coulter. So, and there is more and more trash these days, so that is very important to get that cleaned away. Then you've got a nice clean berm. Just wanted to put in this slide on Kimberly Consulting, and I've got his information if anybody wants to visit with me about him, out of Maxwell, Iowa. He's the one that's helped me a lot through this. We bring him out every year at strip-till time, if it's in the fall, maybe again in the spring. We do it for planting. He helps us set our planter, and then he'll come out during the season, and we dig roots, and I'll show you some of that, how we do. So he works in 8 states, so he travels all the time. And it's also a good aspect because I can hear what somebody in Minnesota is doing, Indiana. He's got a client in Wyoming, some Oklahoma, and I can see how things are going around the United States and what other people are doing. We have a yearly meeting always in January, and it's great to get together and network just as you guys are this year again as if you attended last year. And this is Kevin, and he's showing some different Coulters here. Ones with ripples. If you can see the one behind him there is a wavy Coulter, like that. We use that one a lot in the fall, so we like to have the thinner one in the spring and a thin knife because we don't want to disturb too much soil if we have to do it in spring. We like strip tilling in the fall, but you can't always get it done. Time constraints. So if we have to go in the spring, we'll probably be changing coulters to a thin, narrow coulter with small ripples, and then we'll be going to a very thin knife. And my particular machine, I'm running a four-wheel drive with 710 metric tires, so they're wide. So I am stripping behind my tire. So behind the tires, we have 3 coulters. So I built a bracket ahead to put these 2 coulters, and then the third one, the original one, with the wavy coulter is behind it, right in front of the knife. But that helped a lot, and what that's doing is sizing the soil behind my tires, because otherwise with the compaction that comes from your tractor, it was just, all we would get was clods. And I kind of realized that, again, this spring as I demoed a different tractor, an AGCO 1000, and really liked the narrow tires, so I can see what the difference is. If that's how much difference that wide tires make and the compaction it can make. Because where I went with that narrow tire tractor, and it pulled my machine beautifully. I didn't think it was going to. It was only 385 horse, but it pulled it great. And narrow tires, and it just made a big difference, I could tell, in those strips behind the tractor. I didn't have near the problem. Just showing you a picture of all the different knives. We haven't tried all of these, but it's an option. So Kevin brings me different knives, and we'll try, 1 or 2, on different sides of the machine, see which one's best. You can see that there's mole knives in there. There's thin knives. There's tall knives. I particularly like the taller knife better. I'll show a picture a little later why I like the tall knife. And so if you choose the wrong knife, this is what can happen. You have a hole underneath. And so the only way to know what you've got is to dig. And the best way to dig is take a spade and jam it into the soil as far as you can, and then take another shovel and leave that one in there and take another shovel and just dig it all back out, and then pull that spade out of there at a slight angle. Just pull it back, and then you can see what you've got in your strip. Because that is so important. And what's going to happen here with a hole down there is your roots are just going to travel right to that air pocket, and they're not getting nutrients if they're in air. So we have to get it nice and tight. So that's the reason of changing knives, or changing the coulter, changing the depth. Maybe it's too wet down there. We need to change depth, raise out, so we get a better berm. It's not all what it looks like on top. You have to dig. You have to dig. Just a bunch of pictures of how much hole you can have underneath there. And so this is one particular fall where we started out with a regular mole knife, and as wide as it normally is, it wasn't working correctly. So we just took it back to the shop, cut it down to 1 inch width. There's just showing how it's 1 inch. And then we beveled the point. If you can see there, I'll have another picture later. But this point right here, that was blunt before. Right there. That was a blunt on the knife there. So what we did was just beat it. Yes, it took time to do, but we beat it with a grinder. And that made a world of difference in having that soil to boil and to bring it back in. There's a little better picture of it. But a little later, we found that we were still having issues. So we took the knives back and cut them down to 3/4 inch. And it seems like a lot of work, but strip-till is, if you're going to strip-till, that is your number one process before planting. So if you don't strip-till correctly, your planter's not going to work correctly. There's a little bit better picture of the bevel. This is what can happen if the soil is maybe too wet, or what I said about the short knife. The longer knife, So if you want to be going 10.5 inches deep, then the longest knife is better because where your bolts mount to the shank, that's where you're going to have soil buildup. And then you get a balled on like this. So that's why we're choosing a longer knife as we can get. And actually, some of them we liked the tip of the knife, but they were too short. So we actually welded on our own piece, punched our own holes, and made it longer ourselves. And that's sometimes what you have to do. Just showing another hole there. Now the pitch of the knife can also make a big difference. So this one's pitched out quite a ways. This is about 9-inch pitch. So what you're doing is if you have your knife out at too much of a pitch, you're just going to be boiling way too much soil in the wrong conditions, and it's going to not get closed up and have a nice berm. So what we did here was we took it and we made our own slot. We've got our own iron worker there, so we punched our own slot in it, and we just tipped it back, and we could get so the pitch wasn't near as much. I think this is about 4 inches. That made a world of difference. And one thing you don't want with, back to the hole underneath, if you do it in the fall and you've got an air pocket underneath, then you're going to have sumping, as we call it. So if you can see here, this berm just went away and it just sunk. And you don't want to be planting in a hole. You'd rather be planting on a nice berm. And this here is showing how when we dig it out and everything's correct, there's a nice tight, that's very nice and tight soil, as you can see. And that's what a good berm looks like. When we started in 2010, we did put our nutrients on. We were running in the spring. We put our nutrients on with a cart. And we liked that, but we did also have some root burning because it was dry. And then we knew there was, again, a time constraint, so we really wanted to go to fall. So now we are not putting any nutrients on with our strip-till machine. We're basically out there just tilling. We put our nutrients on now with, we'll do a 50 pounds with our herbicide with a sprayer, and then we run the Y drops in season. And then we run a lot through our center pivots, our fertilizer. So that's how our nutrients are going on now. What we didn't like about this cart was the deep cleats it can leave. And as you can see, they're about 2.5 inches deep, 3 inches deep. And so that meant when it came to the planter, on those rows that were running behind where the cart was, we added extra springs. Even though I have airbag down pressure, we had to add extra springs to it to help that row unit handle that cleat, because otherwise it was just bouncing. So you always got to think of everything that's going on behind you. There's a picture of how deep it is. Now, some guys, so I'm not going to go against carts. Now, some farmers use different tires. Everything works great. So it just happened the cart that I've got had the cleat tires, and just, didn't like what they were doing in my situation. So that strip there, as you can see right there, behind that type of tire, is not looking bad at all. You can deal with that. So nothing against carts or nothing against trying to put fertilizer on with it. Here we're just talking about how we change again. So this is probably the very first picture you saw of the rig was probably one of the very first ones in 2010 or 11. This is about 3 years later when we had to be out there and really change things again. We needed to change the pitch on the wings. Everything just works different sometimes. Now, whether it's soil changes, I don't know if it's sometimes we're running a little bigger combines, so we're getting maybe our rows are different where the combine ran compaction, or we're getting, the cart ran differently. We got a bigger cart, so you're compacting more, and things just change all the time. So we were back out again, and when we work on this, I mean, a lot of times it's a day and a half. I mean, I know if Kevin's coming, it's a day and a half. You don't get anything done but getting that machine set. We take our time at it. But then after that, you just keep checking it, but you know what to check. Oh, that wasn't a video. Okay, also, what I wanted to talk about here was just change, but we change one thing at a time, as I'm sure you've all been taught. It's like, if you change colders, change it on 2 or 3 rows and try the colder. If you're gonna change a knife, try it on a different row that you didn't change a colder. And pitching anything, just try it on one row, you know, about 3 rows across the machine, but and try different things. So this is showing our depth on one side of the machine, and you can see we're about 10.5 inches deep here. And then on the other side, we're about 8 inches deep. So that's the difference we had. So we started working with it. We dug almost every row. You can tell on some rows, you know, maybe you don't have to dig every row, but you're digging and you can say, well, there's a problem here. And then, so when we saw this one wasn't as deep, we made sure we checked the one next to it on the outside, the one next to it on the inside, and see where the change happened. And then we could determine what we need to do, whether it was changing, you know, something on, it had to be on the wing, whether we needed to change the bolts and lower it down a little more, or was it the inside wing? Because I've got 2 sets of wings on this machine. So it could have been the outer, it could be the inner that's holding the outer out. So you just start working with all that. It could be tire pressure. I know we don't always run the exact amount of pressure is what's said. Maybe you should. I know I do it on my planner. On the wing, I started lowering pressure by 8 psi, and that helped my wing stay more stable and stay level with the rest of the planner. So it can be as simple as that. I know Kevin's had people change tire size on machines. So I've never had to do that, but that can be an issue too. It's just what is going on, you know, just the different areas in your field. And that's why we, you know, when we're checking not just on the one pass. So we're going down a pass and it's like, let's move over, you know, skip 2 passes and let's try it there because everything changes. Maybe the combine really drove here and that's what's causing our problem. Find out over another area of the field and go, hey, now the wing is working, so hey, maybe it's just that area. So just do a lot of checking. This is just showing how we do it in the fall and, you know, how well the berm works in the fall. There's a little video. Maybe I lost my sound.
3 coulters in the future, you know, all the way through the board. Now, this is the same furnace, easy to tuck the seat in. Right here is a dip, we have the loose dry dirt. This is how sidewall lift happens. And it sticks and pulls the dirt up.
Okay, I'll start with that one. So that's showing how your true V's work. And that's actually good what that's doing. It seems like it was wet, but that's what you want your true V's to do, is pull that up because you want sidewall fracture. But your rubber tires are there to hold down that soil next to the true V. And that's why we have been running way more down pressure on our planter, even though we've got a nice soft berm. I'm running either 200 or 250, sometimes up to 300 PSI on the airbags. Kind of goes against what a lot of people think. Well, if you have too much air pressure, you're compacting too much. You're not. You're holding that soil down, but your true V's, if they're working correctly, and that's another reason you want to have your gauge wheels tight against your true V's, so no soil gets through there, and you fracture really good. And I'll show some pictures of good fracturing here later. But also what we did there early in the picture is so that had been strip-tilled in fall, and we go out there with a spade and just sweep it, and that way we see how deep we need to run our openers. We have yetter openers on our planter also, and the shark tooth, and how much do we clean? And we want to get it to an even, what's going to be even there. As he showed them dry pockets, that meant, well, we're going to have to go a little bit deeper with our planter openers to clean that out so we have consistent soil. We don't want to be planting into a dry pocket. That seed will not come up. And this shows strips will always be warmer in the spring, usually 10 degrees, I've found. So not that I'm a guy that jumps out and gets out there real early and plants anyway. I'd rather the soil conditions be correct, but they are always warmer. There's a little picture, you can tell the difference, about 10 degrees. Okay, here's a good video of how water filtrates to the strip. A little bit windy, but.
That's not even half the jug. You see, so like when the rain packs this ground, it makes it so the water doesn't run in. You see how mushy this is on top? That's what packs your ground. You see that? Okay. So you move that away, it's all water and mush. And you go down to here, it didn't even soak in to your ground. See, now we're just down to normal ground. Never soaked in except where a nightcrawler went. So you take this out of here, get like right here, pull this away. See how much wetter it is?
Kind of lost the audio there, but basically showing, as you've seen, the water just ran in the middle, but it went right to the strip. That's what your rainwater is going to do, or your irrigation water. You can see it's just wet all the way down that strip. Good moisture. And this is the same field then that we did that test before we planted. And so like I said, Kevin comes back and we'll dig our roots out. We're just seeing how the roots were growing. Very good root structure in that strip. And one of the main things is the crown roots, and that's your main roots. Your crown roots were able to go down as far as they wanted to go. There's a picture of the roots in the fall, how they're growing. I know we didn't dig them all out. Sometimes Kevin gets intense and we dig a really deep pit, and we can get down, we can find roots 4 or 5 feet, but we're just showing the upper ones here, but that takes a long time to dig that out. But this shows, so I run the same tractor on the planter. So that means I'm running over the berm that I just made, whether I stripped in the fall or spring. So I've got the same issue behind the tractor. So what I did differently on the planter is the 4 rows that the tractor runs over the berm, I've got a coulter with my opener. So it's breaking up the cleat so the opener can open it up. So always those 4 rows are always set differently. Not that we don't set a lot of them different on planter, but those 4 rows always have to be treated differently. And we've had some issues with it. That there's my tractor and planter. That's previous tractor, same planter I have now. But so across the planter, so this is a 48-row planter. I'm strip tilling with 24. So that means my planter, you have to be accurate with your guidance system. I wasn't like early in the years. I was 4-inch accuracy, had trouble. I had a 12-row cart, 36-row planter, and then when I went to the 18-row cart, strip till machine, and the 36-row planter, you know, you were missing the strip sometimes, and that can be a major problem. Roots will grow one way, so you really need to be in the center of that strip. So with a deer system, I was running RTK network, so I was 1-inch accuracy. Now I'm running Trimble on the RTKX, so everything's 1-inch accuracy, so I can hit the strips no matter what size. And like on the planter, on the openers, I had to set, so you look at what's happening each spring with your planter too. So behind the strip, normally for the last 3 years, I've been running, my Yetter openers here have been pinned, because you can pin them or you can let them float. And I've had them pinned for the last 3 years because I really, just the way I wanted to move the soil. This year, first day I'm out there planting, I had a problem with one row, and what had happened is the adjustment had fallen all the way down and to as far as it could go. Well, it was actually holding out my row unit because I was trying to figure out why I had seed just like barely in the ground on that one row. Well, I noticed the opener was actually holding it out. As we got going a little bit more with the planter and adjusting, looking at adjustment, I was actually, all my rows were, some of them were really uneven. So I called Kevin and so what's going on here? And he's like, well, maybe this is the year that you got to pull a pin and let your openers float. And that's what we did, and we tried 4 rows and seen what it did. Done a much better job of moving the soil we wanted. And what was happening is just a little bit harder this spring when we first started. And after that, it kept raining, and we had a challenging spring again. But my first fields, it was perfect conditions to plant, but that's what was happening. It was, you know, again, changes. Let the openers float. So we ran them in float the rest of the year. So here's a good picture of your sidewall fracture that I was talking about. So this is what you really want to look like. That's all nice and loose next to your seed. You don't want it compacted. And you can see how you can just crumble that. Here, next picture shows how you can crumble that. I'm running, I noticed the cruiser wheels are here. I'm running 1 rubber tire and 1 cruiser is what I've normally ran. I run 2 cruisers behind the tractor tires to help with that. But on the normal planting, I just run 1 cruiser on one side and 1 rubber, and I've gotten by really well with that. I would not be without the cruisers. And just showing, so when my berm is about 8 inches wide is what I'm making with a strip till machine. Your actual planter gauge wheels are 12 inches wide. So again, you think you're running on that berm, but you're running sometimes on the hard soil. So that is another reason we need to have more down pressure, because we've got to hold that planter down, because the main part of the true V's are in the soft, but the rubber tires are on the hard soil. So we run more down pressure. So there's a picture of how wide that is. So this year, I'm finally going to switch. I'm going to put on narrow gauge wheels. And that way, I'm just on that berm. My gauge wheels have had enough wear on them, so it's just time to get rid of them, and let's go with narrow gauge wheel, and I think things are going to work a lot better. Picture of the evenness of the corn with the strip till. Uniform height is what you want, even emergence. This is just a picture of the soil. So the soil aggregation that we get after strip till. You can see the roots will go through that wonderfully. A good analogy is you can't pack ice cubes, or you can't pack ice cubes, but you can pack crushed ice. So you want little cubes, and that's your roots will just grow through that like crazy. It's a closer picture of the soil. Picture of the roots after harvest. We have done some corn after corn. We haven't last couple of years, but we did for about 5 years straight, and it's a little more challenging on strip till. You don't have to vertical till, but with the trash that was out there, we thought it was best. So we went out and ran with 330. Again, challenging finding the right angle to run the 330. We tried many different angles, and what you really want to happen is the next picture. You want to get those root balls out of the way. You just want to get them disturbed and like knocked out of the way. Even though we're moving over 15 inches when we strip till, you just want to get them knocked out of the way. And then when your strip till comes through, they'll clean anything out of the way. And I know this don't look, it's a little rougher looking in the fall on corn, because there is a lot of residue. There's a few more clods, but by spring, a lot of that trash will be blown off the side. The berm looks so much better. Plant right into it. And there's a picture of the corn, same field, the corn after corn. So we're getting good root growth. If you watch the tires, we're watching the slippage, and that's what we're getting. And we're getting compaction ahead of the strip-till machine. You can tell going up that hill, right there they start spinning more. So what happened, where we had compaction, we've had this with the planter too, with the large tractor. You'll get different sized plants in the rows where the tractor went. These particular pictures are from where the strip till was, where the tractor went when we were strip tilling in the fall before in that corn on corn. Didn't even know that was happening, and we were trying to figure out the pattern there, and it was like, wait a minute, this is every other pass, but it's not where the planter was, it was where the strip till was, and it's like, this don't make sense. But what it was is every other pass I'm going up the hill. The other pass I was going down the hill. I was getting that slippage that you just saw. So that made a difference. So we had to combat that, the next year. Look at what's going on. That's the height difference from the rows. And I had that happen with the planter too. I'm getting a little more away from that now. I run a different tractor, and I got an air compressor on board so I can lower my tire pressure, and that's made a world of difference. I can lower them down to 8 psi. I got to raise them back up on the road for the tongue weight. But you take that little bit of time. I know it takes 20 minutes to air them back up, but it made a world of difference in my plant stand this year. And there's a tractor I got now, a Claus Zerion tractor. This is my 3rd year I've run it on the planter, and just really like that tractor. Like I said, I got an onboard air compressor so I can change PSI. Here's where we didn't strip till this one. We just no-till planned this one into wheat, the volunteer wheat. Now there's a lot of volunteer wheat there, it looks like, and this was the year that we had Volmatoxin in our wheat. It was only 24 bushel, and I couldn't really capture the wheat because the wheat kernels got so small. And what I'm somewhat after anymore is the straw, because I'm in the straw business now. So we just cut it low, and whatever blew out, and so it looks like a lot of volunteer wheat. But it was quite a challenging year to get this through. And we tried strip tilling, but again, we didn't get it stripped in the fall because After our wheat, we run a Sudan grass, so we have some forage, and that meant keeping something growing in the soil. And so we run a Sudan grass, and then we cut that off for forage, and so I didn't have time to strip till in the fall. And that's definitely a mistake on a wheat field because it's so compacted in the spring. So we tried strip tilling, we tried vertical tilling it before we strip till, and just nothing was going to happen. So we went ahead and no-tilled it, and it didn't come out all bad. I think one of the reasons is we have been strip tilling for a number of years. We've got that loose already, so that strip we were planting in had been strip tilled several times, so we could get it to work. And this picture here again, we went over to one of the neighbors that plants. He actually planted this 2 weeks earlier than I did, and it turned cold. And he's no-till, and so we just go out there and dig a plant, and we're just showing his in the middle there versus ours that was planted 2 weeks later in a strip. And we've seen it again this year. Our range was from planting April 24th to I think May 6th was my last corn, and then some that we had to wait because the way the ponding was, we didn't get planted until a little later in May. But that corn caught up, and it can do it. It can just catch up, so especially if it's got a good place to grow. Picture of our roots versus the neighbors again. A little more flat on theirs, and ours are all going down, straight down the strip. Last fall, again, trash was a big problem. It's just getting more and more. Even as you can see, there's corn stalks in there yet, in with the soybean stubble, and so trash was a problem. So here we go again. So what we had a lot of issue was with the openers. We had several of them on the machine that were directly side by side, and they would throw all the trash into each other and then start plugging. So we looked the situation over and says, hey, we got to move these. So all we had to do was take the bracket I have them on, just took the opener and put them on kind of like backwards, so they would just offset each other 6 inches. Made a world of difference in just the trash. So one would throw it and it would land before the other one threw the other one up. So we solved our trash problem. So you just, again, got to look at your machine and decide what you got to do with it. Sometimes it's just simple as that. And that we had that on like 4 different areas on the bar that was happening. So again, just showing a close-up picture of the trash. This was last fall, so there was like a very hard soil. As Kevin called it, like we had plates out there, and they're just blocks of hard soil. And as you can see here, the knife is not really following the colder. That's how hard it was. And what we think is it's right there. You can see the colder, and the knife is off the side. Most of my guidance lines stayed the same when I went from John Deere to Trimble, but John Deere runs on a different axis. They think that the world does curve, but they go to curve where Trimble's straight. And so end to end, our guidance lines work, but sometimes if you're in the center of the field, they're just a little bit different. So what we're thinking here is, again, the knife was wanting to get to our previous strip, which is maybe just a couple inches off, but it's just following the easier path. And so we had to do, there's a good picture of how far off it got. And a lot of clods. So what we ended up doing to solve, we went behind every knife and says, what we got to do. And so as you can see on this one here, we actually put the knife on the opposite side of the shank. So it would follow. And that might change next fall. It would be something we got to look at, but I've never had to do that before, so that's quite unique. And this is a wavy colder running, and that we ran and showing, soil stuck to a little bit. What we did last fall then, when it was hard, we stripped the fields that we done before it rained, once we got a nice little rain, then it worked beautiful. Just had to soften that top up. But so we strip-tilled twice, and normally just stripped it, and then we let it sit for a day, and then we'll come back and strip it again. And what we learned in re-stripping it again is it works so much easier the second time. So we went shallow. Okay, so we went shallow, and then like 5 inches. Sorry, I was looking at your number. 3 inches. 3 minutes I got. About 5 inches, and then we went back second time. We could get down to 8 or 9 inches. And what we learned is move over. We didn't go down the same path because then we'd just be down our tractor tracks again. So we just moved over 30 feet, and then our tractor would run where the the end of the bar was before. So just little tricks like that. I'll just flip through this quickly. Just showing how some of the clods were last fall. Way too big, didn't like it, so that's why stripping a second time made a big difference, and then waiting for the rain. That's just showing again how it is. Just threw in a few slides. We've had, I'm happy to speak here in front of all you about strip-till. We have had a lot of different groups come to our farm and talk about strip-till and technology on our farm. We've had Hungarians, Australians, Russians. It's great to get out and glad people wanted to come and see what we're doing. And, this was this is not on my farm. This is in northern Iowa.
How I called.
Okay, see the difference in the corn. What that was the freeze. A freeze came early, and so the farmer on the left side of him was no-till, and then strip-till on the right-hand side. And what's explained to me is, there was more water in the strip-tilled plant, so that meant there was more sugars, more syrups, and it did not freeze, where the other one got caught by a freeze. So the explanation I heard. So I mean, you've seen it there. So. This is no-till versus strip-till. Neighbors just right across the, different fields and some roots. And just a little picture we done at harvest, and Claus kind of took this and ran with it. So that was kind of fun. So in the end, have to find what you're comfortable with and find your beach. So that's the end of my story.